You're watching Sports Shorts Daily, presented by LeBear's Casino and Hotel in Baton Rouge and the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame Museum in Natchitoches. You can follow Sports Shorts Daily by going to our YouTube page, Sports Shorts, hosted by Ronnie Rantz, and get our 15-minute weekday video. Welcome, everybody, to today's edition of Sports Shorts Daily. Ronnie Rantz here with you, along with some very special guests and a kind of a test first ever look for Sports Shorts Daily. Excited. We're going to have it on our Sports Shorts Facebook page, along with next week we'll be going live on ESPN Baton Rouge, 104.5, 104.9. And so if we have a few kinks today, we apologize, but we're just kind of talk a little sports and try to work out and figure out this TV thing. Myself will be doing it each and every day. We'll have some folks like Chad Blouin, Joel Davis, Tommy Chrysan, Mike Scarborough, many others that will be joining us here on Sports Shorts Daily. And then, of course, you can check us out on Sports Shorts Radio every Saturday morning from 10 until noon on ESPN Radio in Baton Rouge. And we couldn't do it all without our good folks over at LeBear's Casino in Baton Rouge, now open 24 hours, 365. And, of course, their rooftop pool at LeBear's Casino, 21 and over. We bring in a guest today on the show, Mr. Chad Blouin, who's going to be joining us here momentarily. How are you, Chad?
Ronnie, I'm great, man. I'm hoping can you hear me?
I can absolutely hear you and see you. And so the first test is down. We hit the button and it works. We're gonna have another guest here in just a minute. But Chad, you know, folks that have been following you on Facebook and on TV and radio over the years know you're as passionate of a Tiger fan as there are out there, opinionated as a Tiger fan as there are out there. That's why we love you. On Saturday, Mississippi State came in as a 17-point underdog in the Tiger Stadium with a brand new coach, brand new quarterback. I know COVID, 2020 is a COVID year and it's crazy as ever. Not many people, except our guest coming and join us here in just a few minutes, predicted that Mississippi State would win that game. But what was your reaction to the Bulldogs pulling off the big upset?
Garbage. Absolute garbage. I mean, you couldn't – I don't think you could have played against yourself and given up 633 yards with nobody on the field and given up 633 yards. Hard to imagine that you pay a defensive coordinator $2.4 million. I said million dollars to come to Baton Rouge. And you can't even adjust to maybe even try a zone. You stay in man-to-man when you know you don't have the thoroughbreds to cover the state receivers. How do we know that? Because they kept getting burnt over and over and over again. And it's absolutely mind-boggling to me, mind-boggling, that we wouldn't try some kind of zone or something different for $2.4 million, man. Listen. To me, as I've reflected on it, and I mean, it's just had me devastated for a couple of days. As incredible as we were last year, we were totally opposite of that. You know, you thought maybe we could meet in the middle. We didn't think that we were going to have another Joe Burrow, another 15-0 season. I don't think you and I even for one second thought that. But I don't think we also thought for one second that we would go totally opposite of what we saw last year and just be flat out garbage. And that's what it was. Garbage. And it was devastating to watch. By the way, kudos to Mississippi State. I make this point, Ronnie, and I hope you agree with me on this. LSU got Joe Burrow Saturday. That's what they got done.
Yeah.
Last year, when Joe Burrow came out and was shocking the world, everybody kept saying, at first you said, well, my God, we did it against Georgia Southern. Is he that good? He did it against Texas. Is he that good? Then he did it against Florida. Is he that good? Well, this kid, Costello, same scenario. 25th year senior, don't have any classes, comes in and Joe Burrows LSU and carves us up like a Thanksgiving turkey. It was painful and it was embarrassing.
It was pretty embarrassing to say the least. I will say this, Chad. I'm always been a big fan of of the Pirate, and always been a big fan of what, of throwing the football, going back to the Hal Mummy days, when these two were up in Kentucky slinging it around everywhere. I've always liked. I've always liked to just. I always wanted to see what would happen. We're 20 years removed from Tim Couch in Kentucky having some success for a couple of years, throwing the ball 50, 60, 70 times a game. We're getting a chance to see that again. And I didn't think it would work in the SEC these days. I thought the DBs were too good. People were so used to playing nickel and dime all over the place. I did not think that we were going to have this situation where a team could come in and throw the ball all over. That's the thing that shocked me the most. I know that LSU was playing without its best defensive back, but still, he would have been guarding one player. Stingley would have been guarding one receiver. They had 3-4 others that were running open. So my question to you is, now after LSU loses this game loses this game, and that is, who's going to be worse from a standpoint of, is it Bo Pellini or Myles Brennan? Where do we go from here? We're talking so much about the defense, but oh, by the way, the offense was struggle bus city.
Stat of the year, and I think this says a lot about what happened Saturday. Mississippi State had 363 yards after the catch. Think about that. 90% of college football didn't even throw for 363 yards.
Right, in a game.
Mississippi State had 363 yards after contact. What does that tell you? LSU couldn't tackle. Period. I mean, they couldn't do it. They couldn't do anything right. Now, you talk about Myles Brennan, and I want to be real careful here about Myles. Look, LSU scored 34 points. That should have been enough to win. Myles, to me, there's a lot of things good you could say about him. There's a lot of things that are bad that you can see where he held the ball when didn't get rid of it. I'm sure there were many a times when he held the ball too long. But the one thing that you don't see in Myles Brennan, forget about the physical attributes, forget about the not throwing it, but you don't see a chest on this kid. You don't see fire in him. You know what I mean? He just is kind of ho-hum, man. There's no, like Joe Burrow's guy had some dog in him. You don't see a lot of dog out of Myles Brennan. Do you agree with that? I mean, he just kind of takes his helmet and goes and sits on the bench. Just not a lot of fire, man. I mean, to me,
Chad, if you grew up a Brennan and your biggest decision was to do the vanilla creme brulee or the chocolate creme brulee for dessert, you would be a little soft too. You got to overcome a lot of things, Coach. We're overcoming some fine living and a good life. Most of the people that play football that have a lot of success, come up through the blue collar ranks. It's not many people with a silver spoon or live on the good side of town that become great football players. It just doesn't. I mean, it's rare when that happens.
But you agree that he just doesn't. Do you agree with me on that?
It looks to me like he enjoys playing football, as opposed to people that it's their life, that they live and breathe it, live and die with it. And look, I give Myles Brennan a lot of credit. He put on the weight. He waited his turn. He learned behind a couple great ones. From everything we've heard, he's a good guy, good student. But there was something missing on Saturday. And don't tell me he threw for all these yards and, the spin that LSU's going to put out, that he was, top 3 in this category and best debut ever. Yeah, I mean, okay, great. He's got unbelievable weapons, and he had to throw the ball a ton against a defense who's not that great. And so, yeah, he put up big numbers because, you're playing arena football out there. I don't think the Myles Brennan thing is going to work out. Can we get by? Can he be Danny Etling? Sure, he could be Danny Etling. We can get by for a couple of years, have a decent team, make a couple bowl games. We can get by like that. But Myles Brennan, at least this year, is not ready to lead LSU to any big time upsets, or he's not going to pull off an Auburn like Burrow did 2 years ago as a junior, where he looked bad all game long and then all of a sudden, bam, takes him down the field, wins the game against Auburn. It doesn't look like he's got that. And because it was a deer in the headlights look, he was tentative. He couldn't make decisions. It was rough. But can he be solid? Can he be good? Yeah. Can he be better than a lot of what we had in the last 25 years? Sure. But the bar is so high that it looked to the LSU fans, to the naked eye, it looked different by a lot.
It looked different, and again, I don't mind losing a football game, but when after watching Joe Burrow for 2 years compete his rump off and fight for every inch, you kind of got used to that. You don't get that with Myles Brennan, and it's not a knock on him, man. It's like you said. I mean, your analogy is just beautifully spot on, man. When you've been drinking the good tea, it's hard to come back down to Lipton tea. And you know what I mean? It was the team to me looked as unprepared. And by the way, you had 8 weeks to get prepared. Like, you had more time than normal to get prepared. It's not like people say, well, they didn't practice. They did bull crap. You had 8 weeks to get ready. Your offensive line gave up 7 sacks. There was nothing really. Was there anything that LSU did right Saturday? I mean,
the punting was outstanding. The 30-year-old Zach Von Rosenberg looked 21. He was amazing.
Guy's got a future in the league. Ain't no doubt about it. He looked like one. Now look, LSU is replacing 17 people. I mean, that's a big number. But in your wildest dreams, there's no, and I don't care who you are, expert, you can be qualifications. There's no excuse. 633 yards and 363 yards after the catch. That is absolute garbage. And I'm telling you, Ronnie, I'm not over and under on wins for me now. Yeesh.
What are you going with?
Huh?
What are you going with? Over under?
Can we get to 5?
I don't know. I don't know if we can get to 5.
I mean, based on what you saw, I mean, you're not going to beat Auburn. You're not going to beat Florida. You're not going to beat Alabama. Okay, so that puts us at 4 losses right there. All right. Ole Miss looked pretty good against Florida the other day, 51-35. They gave Florida a great Florida defense all they wanted. I mean, it's just I'm telling you, I think to get to 5 is going to be a stretch. Now, this is just based on what we saw Saturday. Things may change. By the way, Vanderbilt gave Texas A&M everything they wanted in the College Station on Saturday. They had Vanderbilt this week. Missouri outscored Alabama in the second half. We got them coming. You know what I mean?
Well, you and I did not, Chad Blouin and I did not see this coming. Mississippi State to Crissy Froyd, who joins us. How you doing, Crissy?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. Crissy is one of the few people on the planet that actually predicted Mississippi State knocking off LSU. First off, before we get to that, Crissy, tell us what all you're doing this football season. It's a long list of things you're covering and writing for, and how can people follow you?
All right. So I covered the Tennessee Titans and the LSU Tigers for USA Today Sports Media Group, and then the Bengals and quarterback analysis at Pro Football Network. And then I do high school football at The Advocate. I occasionally do some broadcast stuff with WAFB. I started my own segment on quarterback breakdowns. It's going to air weekly. It's just kind of my own thing. And then me and my friend are in the process of putting together our own podcast. It's called Outkicking Our Coverage. It's going to cover a lot of sports related topics, but we're also going to have a lot of fun with it. It's going to be a little bit of a different spin than I've taken on a lot of my projects in the past.
So if people want to follow you, how can they do so on social media?
Crissy_Froyd on Twitter.
Crissy_Froyd, Froyd on Twitter. Crissy, all right, so you predicted Mississippi State beating LSU, and you didn't do this last week. You did this over the summer. Why? What did you see? What information did you have that led you to predict this huge monumental upset?
Well, I typically work with a lot of quarterbacks ahead of the draft, just kind of promoting them, giving them publicity, just the guys that I pick out that either stand out in the SEC to me or they have some sort of possible connection to the Titans. And Anthony Gordon from Washington State was one of those guys. He was a little bit under the radar, watched him at the Senior Bowl, and Mike Leach just so happened to be his former coach. So I had a one-on-one interview with him during COVID over the phone, and we just talked about Anthony Gordon, and I knew all the things I had seen in him. He has a really nice 3-quarter release, and Mike said it was one of the fastest he'd ever seen, thought it was faster than anyone even in the NFL right now. And I was just so impressed with Anthony and just seeing the numbers he put up and what he could do under Mike Leach. And then I started looking at KJ Costello pretty early on, because I started looking at all the quarterbacks around the SEC very early on in the summer, because it is what I specialize in. And between what LSU lost and what I thought that Mike brought to the table, what I thought that KJ brought to the table, I saw no possible way that LSU would be able to pull this off. So I listed it as one of the 3 losses that LSU could have, in addition to Alabama and Florida, in my predictions. And then finally, a few days before the game, I asked people what their predictions were, and I said State by a touchdown. And everybody's like, "Oh no, that's crazy! You're crazy! You're wrong!" But sure enough, it happened. I felt like I had a really good feel for Costello, and I had full confidence that he was the best quarterback in this conference.
All right. Well, I'm Chad. I'm going online right now, making my bet. Okay, take Alabama over LSU and take Florida over LSU, because Crissy said to. Now that you've seen the game, do you think LSU loses more? Do you stand by that kind of 7-3 prediction? Was there more red flags for the Tigers than you originally thought?
Yeah, I think so. I think we almost saw a little bit of regression from the offensive line as opposed to last year. I knew that Myles Brennan was kind of going to have a hard time transitioning, like all the guys do whenever they get out on the field as a starter for the first time. But it was just very concerning. He has absolutely no pocket presence. His decision-making is bad. It's a question of, can he fix that? Can he get his feet under him? And like I've said all offseason, there's so much young talent and all these high ceilings for potential, but how many guys are going to tap that and how many guys are going to fall short? There were a lot of guys that showed a lack of promise to me this game, and it's only the first game, and this is a very new, very good-looking Mississippi State team. But if they go out on the field and it looks anything like it did this time around, kudos to Jacoby Stevens. He did a good job. But if it looks anything like it did this time around, I could see LSU going 5-5, 6-4 even. Because you think about teams like Auburn in there. I think they catch a little bit of a break against Vanderbilt and Missouri, though, moving forward these next couple of weeks.
No question they're going to be able to get right, in theory, the next couple of weeks. Chad, your reaction to Crissy calling it, picking Mississippi State over LSU, and look, had a lot of good information. And look, it wasn't just a fly-by-night prediction. Everything that she pointed out and all the red flags that came up came true.
Well, there's 2 things that I want to talk about this young lady. Number one, she's on the all-resume team. Are you kidding me? You got a resume like that? Are you serious? The other thing is, you're on my all ESP team. I mean, I don't know how you had the foresight to see that. I mean, just remarkable insight and foresight. You're looking back, maybe, it's easy to go back in hindsight and say, yeah, well, but man, to see it before, pretty impressive. And Mike Leach, I wonder, we talk about the over and under for LSU. I wonder what the over and under is now for Mississippi State. This kid Costello is now 8-1, all of a sudden off the radar, 8-1 to win the Heisman. All right, that's pretty good odds. He's part of the top 10 with a chance to win the Heisman after one game. And of course, Mike Whitney throwing for 633 yards. What's the over and under on Mississippi State?
I don't know what the over under is on Mississippi State, but I'll say this is that I think Mississippi State put the SEC on notice. A win like this, and as we know as LSU fans, we've all been watching LSU the last couple of years. You saw what that grad transfer, that older veteran guy can do for your program. They've got a whole new belief system. I mean, not only is Mississippi State went from a running team being one of the better running teams in the SEC and one of the worst passing teams, they flipped the script. They put the SEC on notice. They've completely 180'd the whole offense. But now there's a belief. And look, everything that those coaches were talking about in the offseason, Crissy, everything they talked about has come to fruition. It's one thing to say we're going to do this, we're going to do that. This is why we're going to win. Then when you go out there on the road Tiger Stadium, and we know it wasn't the traditional Tiger Stadium, but still you get a win against that team with Tigers across the chest. Now all of a sudden, every player on that team, every booster, every AD, everybody is all in 1,000%.
Yeah, I saw that they launched a bandwagon sign-up form yesterday, which I think is totally funny. But yeah, I think that I've just seen so much of what Mike Leach has done before, and all of the quarterbacks that I've seen come from him, I've been very impressed with. I've been very impressed with the way that he can take a guy from a very small background and make them into a big deal. Just his ability to groom quarterbacks. So I think that ahead of him coming in and installing this, there was already a faith that I had in it. And then a lot of people were like, oh, you're going to bring the air raid to the SEC. This is not going to work. And there were a few people I talked to that were kind of like, Mike Leach, he's a good hire for the culture. He's going to get the fans excited, but that's going to be about it. He's an interesting guy. So I think that they really put all the doubts to rest. And the rest of the Mississippi State schedule I've looked at a little bit, but I really do think that it's only up from here, because if they were that strong in their first performance, I will say that the defense obviously needs to do some work. You can tell that by the final score. And the fact that they were able to let the LSU offense put up as many points as they did while they were struggling. But I think that there's good things in the future for the Bulldogs.
I think last year, and I said this when we came on the air, Costello, Joe Burrow at LSU. I mean, last year, you when you were watching LSU earlier in the season, you kept thinking, is this real? Is this real? And it ended up, and I wonder if we're not going to look back and say the same thing. At the end of the year, maybe this loss to Mississippi State wasn't as bad as we thought it was. Maybe Mississippi State does this to a lot of people. But you still, I think, Christy and Ronnie, no matter if State goes on and runs the table and wins the national championship, I still don't think there's any way in my mind you can justify giving up 633 yards on the ground. I mean, through the air. That is absolutely mind-boggling. 350 plus yards after catch. I mean, that's just unexcusable. I don't care how good Mike Leach is. I don't care how good Costello is. Man, I mean, that's an insane number to try to wrap your mind around. And it happened in Death Valley on Saturday. And I keep saying it, but it's just so hard to believe. $2.4 million, 633 yards are through the air at SEC record. Absolutely mind-boggling.
Crissy, let me ask you this one final question. You're the kind of the quarterback guru, right? That's what you specialize in. You study all these quarterbacks, particularly in the SEC. You made the prediction in the summer that Costello was going to be the number one, and you're on your board, the number one ranked quarterback in the SEC. Where did you have Myles Brennan going into the season?
I believe I had him somewhere in like the middle. I want to say it was somewhere between 7 and 10.
7 to 10 ain't the middle. 7 to 10's on the backside of the middle. So you didn't have a lot of, you had a lot of trepidation, I guess, if you will. Myles Brennan was third on the Heisman list in Vegas, just because people saw what Oklahoma did and everybody wins the Heisman or almost wins the Heisman if you go play quarterback at Oklahoma. They thought, well, LSU's heading to that kind of system and they're going to sling it everywhere. Obviously, that's not the case. Myles Brennan in your board, you had him, you say, somewhere 7, 8, 9 in the SEC out of 14 quarterbacks. Everybody else in the country had him a lot higher. What did you see and know that led you to believe that he may not be as good as people think?
Well, I knew that we had only seen Myles in limited action, but what I did see was an inconsistent quarterback who got rattled easily, that got stuck on one read. And I think the concerning thing about that is that's exactly what I saw Saturday. He sat behind one of the greatest college football players of all time in Joe Burrow. And I don't want to say that it looks like he's learned absolutely nothing, but it looks like maybe he learned something and that he can't put it together on the field. And like you mentioned earlier, they're putting out all these numbers, but you can only get so much from a stat line. A stat line only means so much, and that's why you need to watch the film. I was there in the press box at the game on Saturday, and that player looked nothing like Joe Burrow. I was in the press box against Miami in Cowboy Stadium, and those two performances, polar opposites. And I just, if he can't get things right mentally, which I commended Joe Burrow for so much, and if this is not a matter of just, oh, he needs to settle in, then he's simply not going to work out ever. When I first got into analyzing quarterbacks, one thing that I constantly got stuck on was raw physical ability. And I will give him the fact that he does throw the deep ball well. Mm-hmm. And that's one reason why I love Zach Mettenberger so much originally. And I was hung up on that guy for so long because of, oh, he's so tall. Oh, he can throw the deep ball so well. But you know what? He lacks accuracy. He's a statue. And he's not always solid in his decision making. So I think that with Myles, if he can't get it right mentally, which Joe Burrow is pretty much unparalleled mentally, then it's not going to work. And
well, that's an excellent breakdown because, you talk to any former player that played the position or any players that played on offense that, that's the mental side and the toughness, but also the smarts and to be able to make decisions on the quick. Those are more important than your arm strength, your size. You have to have a feel for the pocket. You have to not be afraid. You have to not look at the rush as it's coming and continue to look downfield, which is so difficult. I can remember as a kid, I'm 6'5", so I didn't get a chance to play quarterback growing up. I played tight end and other positions on defense. But I just remember like when I was a freshman in high school, playing a little quarterback in practice when we were going live and just being amazed, when you never played it before, being amazed from that perspective, how fast people got on you and all the action around you. And so, it takes a little time to learn how to do that, to not pay attention to everything and just feel. To me, Myles Brennan looked like that freshman in high school, Ronnie Rantz did, where he looked at the rush. You're right. One read, it's not there. And then it was like, oh, crap. And he'd look around and he'd see everybody around him instead of continuing to look downfield. Hopefully it was first game jitters. It was all of that. He's going to play in Nashville on Saturday against a not so great Vandy team in front of about a couple hundred students. So there's nothing to be scared about. There's not even going to be 25% fans there. They are going to allow some students we're hearing from at Vanderbilt to go to the game. So hopefully we see a dramatic change in Myles Brennan, because if not, this could be one of those crazy bad seasons for LSU. And if you're going to have a bad season, do it during COVID 2020, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that everything starts with the offensive line and the quarterback when it comes to success. And those are two areas that LSU seems to be struggling with right now. And just like I cover Cincinnati, and even if you have a great quarterback like Joe Burrow, let's say that Myles Brennan becomes everything that we thought he could be and more. Well, that other people thought he could be. I didn't pin that down on paper. If the offensive line can't put it together, then you're going to have maybe some close games that come down to the wire, or come down to between 7-5, 10 points, somewhere in that realm, like Cincinnati, who's sitting at 0-2-1 right now.
She's Crissy Froyd. Crissy, tell the folks once again how they can follow you.
Well, you can find me at Pro Football Network, USA Today Sports Media Group, and then on Twitter, Crissy_Froyd, if you can manage to spell my name correctly.
That's right. One last thing. You predicted LSU before the season to go 7-3. You had losses against Mississippi State, Alabama, and Florida. Do you amend that prediction right now?
I would say they could definitely lose to Auburn.
Mm-hmm. All right, there you have it. Go to the window at the casinos in Mississippi and place your bet on Miss Crissy Froyd's prediction. She's been right so far on everything else. We'll hear from her from time to time. Thanks to Chad Blouin for joining us. Crissy, appreciate it very much.
Of course. Thank you.
All right. We'll be back with Sports Shorts Daily right here on Sports Shorts, presented by the good folks over at LaBerge Casino. And don't forget to check out follow Sports Shorts on Facebook, and go to YouTube, Sports Shorts, hosted by Ronnie Rantz. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you next time, everybody.
Thanks for watching Sports Shorts Daily, presented by LeBear's Casino and Hotel in Baton Rouge and the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame Museum in Natchitoches. Don't forget to follow Sports Shorts on Facebook, Twitter at sports_shorts, and check us out on Saturday mornings from 10 to noon at Sports Shorts Radio on 104.5, 104.9 ESPN Radio in Baton Rouge.